Well, welcome to another Friday night. Tonight we come to the last of our 85 characteristic talks. And what I'm going to cover tonight are the characteristics that have to deal with relationships. Now, we've covered a bunch of different relationship stuff already. These are kind of the loose ends that need to get tied up. So the first one is people coming out of complex trauma have grown up usually with double standards in relationships. So they grew up where dad could be angry, but nobody else could. Mom could have snacks, but nobody else could. Dad would swear, but the kids couldn't swear. Kids had to give mom and dad respect, but mom and dad didn't have to give the kids respect. So that double standard basically said to them that if you're in authority, you don't have to follow the rules. The rules don't apply to you. You can do whatever you want. You're kind of above the law. So really two things come out of that to me are really important to understand. So that leads most people coming out of complex trauma to be very hypersensitive to injustice, because living by double standards is basically life isn't fair. It's one set of rules for one person, different set of rules for another. There's not a fairness. So there's a real hypersensitivity to any injustice in their adult life. But secondly, what many don't realize is that though they hate the double standard stuff, though they've been hurt by it over and over again, when they get to be adults and then in positions of authority, often in relationships, intimate relationships where they're in a position of power, they often slide into this double standard without even realizing it. So now that they're the boss, they get to make their own rules and they get to make rules for others. And often there's a difference. And so it's so important to realize that what really is going on with this double standard that causing this injustice sensitivity is this isn't love. This isn't treating others the way you want to be treated. This isn't treating everybody equally. This is not love. And so if we're going to get healthy, we have to live by this love, not double standard. The next one is most people coming out of complex trauma have trust issues. It's so important to understand that children are naturally trusting. They can't meet any of their own needs. And so in order to survive, they have to fully trust somebody else, that they're going to meet their needs. And children are very forgiving if somebody lets them down, that they'll trust again. So you think of a child who's on the roof and is told to jump, and they jump and the parent doesn't catch them. But then the next time they're on the roof, the parent says, I'll catch you this time. And the child just trusts again. They give the parent another chance. So it takes an awful lot to kind of knock trust out of a child. They just keep trusting those in authority over and over again. But in complex trauma, what is happening is two things usually. Either those in authority consistently aren't trustworthy, or they're inconsistent. So some days they're trustworthy, some days they're not. That one really presents the biggest issue for kids, because they keep hoping that next time the parents will be trustworthy because they have been trustworthy in the past. So it takes even longer for them to give up on trust. But eventually they get to a point where they feel betrayed. And that's, to me, to have trust broken over and over again is betrayal. And that's why often we refer to complex trauma as betrayal trauma. And so what happens at that moment is they go to kind of two different ways of dealing with that finally broken trust. Number one, I'll never trust again. Trust means you're going to get hurt. Trust means people are going to promise one and not deliver. You're going to get betrayed. The second option that some go to is, if I like you, I'm going to trust you 100%. And so they just keep going to people that they like, trust them 100%. So it's kind of all or nothing. But those that trust 100% all at once haven't checked the person out, haven't seen if there's evidence that they're trustworthy. All they're going by is their limbic brain saying, I like you. And so they set themselves up to get hurt again and again. Now, I think it's really important to understand the importance of trust in life. To me, trust is the foundation of a healthy life. You can't have healthy, intimate relationships without trust. And so, to me, the tragedy of complex trauma, or one of the tragedies, is it destroys one of the building blocks of a healthy life. So that kids stop trusting in order to not get hurt again, in order to survive. But once they get to adult life and they don't trust, all their intimate relationships don't work. It prevents healthy intimate relationships. It leads to control, jealousy, manipulation, all kinds of things that are so detrimental. And so complex trauma isn't just affecting the child, it's affecting all future relationships. Now, trust can be rebuilt. That's, to me, the hope. But it takes years to rebuild trust. Once it's been knocked out of you, once it's been destroyed, yeah, you can rebuild it, but you got to be prepared. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of time, but you got to do it correctly. So how do you build trust in a healthy way? Well, you meet somebody, you listen to your gut first of all, and do you sense that they're safe? Do you sense that they are trustworthy? Then, if you do, you then trust them for something little. You trust them in a little thing. And if they prove to be trustworthy in that little thing, then you might trust them in a little bit more. If they prove to be trustworthy there, you trust them in a little bit more. You gradually build trust over time. As they prove to be trustworthy, the evidence has nothing to do with the limbic brain. The evidence shows that this person can be relied upon. So it's a gradual process over time where you trust a little bit more, until you get to a point where you go, I think I can trust this person with my life. There's another piece, though, to this that is so important for people from complex trauma to understand. Most people from complex trauma stop trusting others, but they also stop trusting themselves. So what has happened once they started getting into adult life is they started making bad decisions because of all their maladaptations. They didn't meet their own needs. They let people down. They didn't make good decisions in life. They didn't keep their promises to people. So they broke trust with themselves over and over again. They convinced themselves that they weren't trustworthy, that others shouldn't trust them because they would lead them astray. They would give them bad advice, make bad decisions. And so it led then to an internal critic that just said, you are totally untrustworthy, and they just don't trust themselves at all. And so an important part of recovery is rebuilding trust with yourself. And I think for many, before you can even start trusting others, a good starting point is to start to be able to trust yourself. So just a couple things about that. To me, a lot of people don't trust themselves, want to trust themselves, but they set unrealistic standards that they got to do everything perfectly. They got to not be human, basically. And so what you have to realize is, to be trustworthy, I got to set realistic standards. I got to set realistic goals. And I might have 100 different goals, but I can't do them all in one day. So I got to start with just one goal. And so I'm going to get up at 6 in the morning, and I'm going to consistently do that. I am going to then spend some time doing yoga, meditation, go for a walk, whatever. But you gradually build new habits, new routine that is healthy, that meets your 12 needs, and you stick to it. Now, the key with it is you can't let your limbic brain be in charge, because your limbic brain is only going to get up at 6 in the morning, do yoga, go for a walk if it feels like it. You have to get the cortex as the control center of your life, so that I'm going to do this because it's right, not because I feel like it. I'm going to do this because it's healthy, and I'm going to do it every day, regardless of how I feel. Then you start to consistently meet your needs, keep your word to yourself, keep your promise to others, and you become trustworthy to others and to yourself, and you're able to start trusting yourself again. Now, there's something else that I need to point out here. A lot of people coming out of complex trauma have in their adult life made a lot of bad decisions, and they've let a lot of people down, and people just don't trust them anymore. Their kids don't trust them, their family doesn't trust them, their friends don't trust them. And so the danger is to come into recovery and go, I am committed to change. I am going to be trustworthy. So trust me now. And kind of demand that everybody trust you right away. And then be offended that they're still not trusting you, that they're still looking at you with suspicion when you say you're going to go out with friends and they're, okay, yeah. We know what that means. It means you're going to make a bunch of bad decisions. So understand that for most people who've had their trust violated, it takes 2 to 5 years of a person being trustworthy before you're able to trust them totally again. You have to just accept that that's part of the consequences of all my past untrustworthiness. I have to accept now that to rebuild trust, people are going to be a bit suspicious of me for 2 to 5 years, and I can't get all offended by that. That's just the reality I have to accept. So rebuilding trust is so important, but it takes a lot of time, and it takes becoming trustworthy as a key piece to that. The next one is that most people coming out of complex trauma have authority issues. So basically, everybody in their life who's been an authority has let them down, has hurt them, has not met their needs. So authority to them has meant unjust treatment, betrayal, being lied to, broken promises, needs not met, unjustly punished. So authority equals being hurt. So what comes out of that for some people with complex trauma is oppositional defiance disorder, or ODD. It's frequently diagnosed now in children. So let me give you some of the reasons why oppositional defiance disorder comes out of complex trauma. So the first is, if you look at the diagram, when a child is an infant, they have zero control. Their parents have 100% control because they have to meet all the child's needs. The goal, though, of parenting is that when the child reaches 20, the child will be able to have 100% control of their life, and their parents can just let them go out into the world, have zero control. So what you see there is there's going to be, over the course of the 20 years of the child's life at home, a gradual giving up of power by the parents of control, and giving the child more and more autonomy to make their own decisions. And if the parents have connected, if the parents are meeting the child's needs, the child will make more and more decisions that are good decisions. But what happens if you get a parent who doesn't want their child to make a bad decision? It could be because of their own past that they haven't fully dealt with. They made a lot of bad decisions. It could be because of their own shame issues. They want to look good, image issues. They don't want their child to make them look bad. They don't want their child to go through any pain. So they try to control the child. And they exercise control beyond what they should. They don't let the child start making decisions. So what does the child do? The child pushes back. The child defies. It's a good defiance. It's a good pushback. It's saying, hey, give me room to grow up. But what does this parent then do when they sense their child is pushing back, their child is rebelling against their overly controlling ways? Often the parent tries to control even more. And that then leads to the child pushing back even more. So now you got a growing distance. So the parent's trying to control more, the child pushes back even more, and it easily gets to the place where the child goes, whatever the parent tells me to do, I'm doing the opposite. It no longer matters if the parent is giving them good advice, good counsel. That's not the issue, the advice. The issue, it's coming from my parent. And my parent, all they want to do is control me. So I will not allow them to control me regardless of what their advice is. I will do the opposite. That is oppositional defiance disorder. The problem with that is when they get to adult life and they encounter somebody in an authority position who gives them advice or gives them instruction, it immediately triggers, I will do the opposite. If it's an authority, they're trying to control me and it's only trying to hurt me and restrict me. It's only bad. So I will do the opposite. So they no longer give any consideration to, is this advice wise or not? The only consideration is it from an authority. If it is, I will do the opposite. So as a result, you can see that this person now could be rejecting very wise counsel and doing something that's very hurtful for themselves, just because they just have to rebel because they assume that all authority is only trying to control them and hurt them. And so recovery for people with oppositional defiance is when you're with authorities and they give you advice or instruction and you get triggered, get yourself back into your cortex. Do not just have a knee-jerk reaction, but evaluate, is this wise advice or not? Because not all authority is trying to control me. Some authority has my best in mind. That is really challenging, but it is really important to begin to be able to do that. Otherwise, you just have reactive decisions all the time that often are bad. There's another reason why oppositional defiance takes place, and that is children growing up with complex trauma families, parents with double standards where dad can swear, nobody else can, dad can be angry, nobody else can. They just see hypocrisy. They see parents that talk one thing but live a different thing. That's very unhealthy. That's very unkind. Parents that say they love them but aren't meeting their needs. And they're just rebelling against the hypocrisy. That's actually a healthy rebellion. I do not want to be like that. I do not want to connect to that. I want to make a statement that that is wrong. And that's what a child does. But again, that can progress and kind of become a deep-seated maladaptation in the child. Another reason is children begin to feel in complex trauma that the rules that they're being given have nothing to do with what's good for the kid. It's only about what makes the parents' lives easier. So they got all kinds of rules that actually are hurting them, restricting them, taking the fun out of life. And so now they're just rebelling against rules. Any rule they just assume is a bad rule. And now there's the attraction of the forbidden. There's a knee-jerk reaction to any rule. And again, it started out as a good thing, but it turned into a bad thing. Then what you can see when the child is growing up with parents who are hypocrites is they lose respect for those parents. And so now when the parent sets a boundary, they go, why should I keep your boundary? I don't respect you. You don't have healthy boundaries. You're not a healthy person. And so it's partly the loss of respect that is happening as well. But it's also about the loss of connection or lack of connection. So the child's tried to connect, but the parents are too busy. The child doesn't feel safe. The child doesn't feel heard. The child doesn't feel seen. The child is trying to have these people as their safe rock in life, but they're just not there for them. And so they just react to that. They respond to that. They go, okay, I'm out of here. I want nothing to do with this. I'll find my connection somewhere else. You are not a safe rock. So I am setting up my boundaries now so I don't get hurt by you. And then it can finally be children who get hurt over and over again by parents in complex trauma can develop this deep anger that turns into a deep resentment. And so now they just want to rebel. They just want to hurt the parents back. They just want to be difficult. They just want to cause the parents grief. That's their way of getting revenge. So all of those things can feed into oppositional defiance. There's another characteristic relationship-wise, and that is victim mentality. So I need to explain that children in complex trauma are legitimate victims. I'm not judging that. I'm not condemning that. Here is a child whose needs aren't getting met, who is being hurt, and they're trying to fix the problem. They're trying to change to get people to now meet their needs, to stop hurting them, but nobody is. And the child didn't ask for it. They didn't do anything to deserve it, but they are being mistreated. They are a victim. They can't do anything about it. And so what begins to happen is the child goes from being just a victim to now feeling like a helpless victim, a hopeless victim, that they can't resolve the situation. And so they easily can slide into a victim mentality. And so what happens when they come into adult life is as soon as life gets difficult, they can be feeling confident, they can feel being hopeful, but as soon as they face a problem that they can't resolve right away, they can go from feeling 100% empowered to feeling helpless and hopeless in a heartbeat. And they can go to feeling like a helpless victim in a heartbeat. That happens so subconsciously for people coming out of complex trauma that all of a sudden they develop this, I can't do anything about it. It's useless, it's hopeless. And what then can begin to happen is they will go, let's say in a crisis, to visit a counselor or a coach, and they'll complain about their partner, they'll complain about their circumstances, but they won't do anything to change them. The counselor will give them lots of advice and tell them you should probably do this, consider doing this, and they won't follow any of the advice. Why? Because they just are stuck in being a victim. That is such a dangerous place. People that come out of complex trauma who slide into this victim mentality usually don't grow too much in recovery. They grow to a certain point, but then they keep sliding into this victim mentality where they just are helpless. They don't feel they have any agency, so they don't do anything to change their situations. There's another piece to this that I think is important, and that is what happens when a child is in pain in a healthy home is parents come and validate their pain. And there's something in having your pain validated that is comforting but empowers you to be able to change it. What happens in complex trauma is you're in pain, you're getting no validation for your pain. In fact, you're getting judged for your pain. And so victim mentality for some people is a way of self-pity. It's a way to feel sorry for yourself. It's a way to give yourself validation. They don't realize it's paralyzing, that now you're getting benefits out of remaining a victim, feeling sorry for yourself. It feels a little bit good, but it paralyzes you from actually changing. So it becomes self-defeating. There's one other piece to this for some people, and that is when you look at complex trauma families, often you find that everybody in the family is acting like a victim. So if you look at the diagram, it's called the drama triangle. So you have, let's say, dad, and he's narcissistic. So he's angry, he's judgmental. He acts like he's in control. He acts like he's the boss. But what happens when things don't go his way? He plays the victim. He blames mom, he blames the kids for all of his problems. He doesn't take responsibility to grow up, to change, to improve things. He just blames everybody. Then you look at mom, the enabler. So what happens with her? Does she stand up to dad? Does she say, I am not going to continue to live like this? I am going to get out of here, protect the kids? No, she blames the kids. She blames her husband. She goes to counseling to try to get the counselor to fix the family, but she's not willing to actually change and stand up for stuff. Who are the true victims? The children. Everybody else is playing the victim mentality, where the true victims are the children. And so when you grow up in a family where you got your two people, your parents, your caregivers, who are in a victim mentality, that's your normal, that's your template, and it's very easy to slide into it. So recovery is about getting out of any victim mentality. It is saying that child was a victim. That child didn't have tools. That child didn't have support. But I have agency now. I have tools. I have support. I can make a difference in my circumstances today. I can make decisions today that that child couldn't make about relationships, about boundaries, about changes. And I'm going to do it. I will not continue to get stuck and feeling and acting like a helpless victim. And so in every situation, you look at what's my responsibility? What's their responsibility? I can change what I want. If they don't change what they should be changing, what is their responsibility, then I need to make decisions about my next move. The next characteristic: people from complex trauma tend to be attracted to emotionally unavailable people. And that's because in complex trauma, the significant people of your life weren't emotionally available. They were too busy. They were angry. They were depressed. They were involved in addiction. They were workaholics. They had their own trauma that made it difficult for them to be present to people in relationships. And so a child basically does not then have secure attachment. Their template for relationships is emotionally unavailable people. And so what does the child do in their mind? They go, it must be my fault that my parents aren't attaching to me, that they're not available to me. So the challenge then for the child is, I bet you I can figure out how to get them to attach. So they continue to go, if I try this, maybe my parents will be available to me. If I try this, if I please them in this way, then they will want to be available to me. They place all the responsibility on themselves. But the key is that emotionally unavailable people become their norm. So when they get to adult life, two things happen. When they meet an emotionally unavailable person, it feels normal. And so they're actually attracted to it. But then part of them still is, I couldn't get mom and dad to attach to me. But now the challenge is all over again. What if I can get this person to attach to me? Let's try all of the different things. This now gives me energy that I want to try to get them to attach. Then there's another piece to this, and that is if they meet somebody and there is a very intense feeling of connection. Oh, we're so close. There's a chemistry. It's not real, true intimacy. It's just intense oxytocin. Then they go, oh, I think this person must be emotionally available. When usually the opposite is true. They've developed the ability to create intense feelings of connection because they're emotionally unavailable. And so the person gets drawn into chasing after feelings of connection without really checking out if the person is emotionally available. But there's something else that tends to happen. When you grow up with a template where the people in your life are emotionally unavailable, what can happen without realizing it is that gradually you become emotionally unavailable. Because you realize that by being emotionally available, you are getting hurt. So what many people do, and this is very subtle, often subconscious, is they are good at seeming like they're emotionally available. They're good at caring for people. They're good at being giving, at being kind, at helping people. And it looks like they're so emotionally available, but that's their persona. Anybody that tries to get to know them beyond just that service that they do in caring for people, they'll bump into a wall. They'll find this person is not going to let me into their inner world. So they act so emotionally available, But that is just a surface thing. And so it becomes so important for people coming out of complex trauma to begin to realize you can never have a healthy relationship unless I am emotionally available, unless I find people who are truly emotionally available. And that means I have to deal with my insecure attachment issues. I have to learn to attach in healthy ways to healthy people. And that is a huge challenge, and we've done other videos on that. The next characteristic of people coming out of complex trauma is that they have a distorted view of love. Most people coming out of complex trauma do not understand unconditional love because they've never experienced it. So for them, love must be earned. You only get what looks like love if you earn it. Then, if you earn love and they do something for you, what looks like love, it's not really love. Now, basically, you're obligated to them. You're in their debt. You now owe them. They have something over you. So love is actually sets up relationships where now you have to pay back. You keep score. You owe, they owe. It's always keeping calculations in your mind of who owes who. Another misconception about love for many people is that love is sex. And so if you love somebody, then sex is how you show that to them. And that is very, very common. Another one is love equals pity. So they can think of as a child, they didn't experience love, but if they saw a dog or a cat who was in pain, they would immediately feel pity for that, empathy. And that felt like love. And so now when they feel empathy and pity for somebody who's hurting, they feel in love with that person. And then a sad one is for many people coming up complex trauma, they begin to equate love with pain. That if you love somebody, then you gotta hurt them somehow. You gotta restrict their fun. You gotta punish them. That's how you show love to a person. And so love and pain get very much confused. Now there's another piece to this that I need to speak to, and that is people who grow up in complex trauma who've never experienced unconditional love. What happens is they almost become waterproof to genuine love. So if somebody was to try to heap unconditional love on them today, it'd be water off a duck's back. They wouldn't be able to receive it. Something in them would say, what's your agenda? This, now you're pitying me. Now I owe you. You're just doing this to be kind. You don't really mean it. And it would just, they wouldn't be able to receive it. They wouldn't be able to absorb it. It takes time to relearn love and to be able to accept love. And you can only do it with safe people. But this, again, to me, is trust is a key building block of life. Unconditional love is a key building block of life and intimate relationships. Complex trauma destroys both, but so important to gradually relearn them. The next one is those coming out of complex trauma don't know what healthy loyalty is. So let me start with this. Children are naturally loyal. When they love and respect somebody, they are loyal. You don't have to tell them to be loyal. They just are naturally loyal. But what happens in a home where parents are behaving in ways that don't engender respect, don't engender love? They're not safe people. They're hurting the children. They're not meeting their needs. So the child naturally, a healthy child, their natural instinct is to put boundaries up, to stay away from these people. But the parents within this unhealthy home, they want loyalty from their children. But the children are naturally not going to be loyal to them because they are not safe. So how do they engender loyalty in these children that are being hurt, that are being neglected? Well, they do a couple things. Number one, you create loyalty through fear. If you ever go against me, you're going to regret it. They demonize anybody that's a rat. And they have the harshest punishments for those who are rats, who talk. Then there's an indoctrination process. Blood is thicker than water. You're always there for your family. You don't have anybody else but your family. So they're constantly conditioning them to loyalty, loyalty, loyalty to those that are harmful. And what is really being put into the child's mind is this, that now you're loyal to people who are hurtful, who don't live by love, people that aren't going to be held accountable for their bad decisions and their bad behavior. You have to protect them. You have to keep them from ever experiencing consequences. You have to just take the hurt and not require equal treatment. So that is what is beginning to happen. So let me just say this. True loyalty is first of all to truth and love, the things that create safety and health. So my greatest commitment and loyalty is to loving and to truth. Those are the only things that make a healthy society, healthy relationships. True loyalty is not to a person initially. It's only to people who live out truth and love. I can be loyal to those people because they're safe, they're healthy. But if that person is no longer following truth and love, then I shouldn't be loyal to them. Because to be loyal to them basically is saying, I am being loyal to hurting other people. I am being loyal to violating love, to protecting people from negative consequences so that they can continue hurting other people. And that's only going to hurt society. So false loyalty is to hurtful people who do more and more damage. But wow, that indoctrination process of false loyalty is so deep that people are afraid to break it because of what might happen to them if they ever break the loyalty code. The next one, people coming out of complex trauma tend to have control issues. So when you think of a child in complex trauma where their needs aren't being met, where there's chaos, where they're getting hurt, where it's inconsistent, you can see that control, being in control, is quite attractive. It seems to meet a whole bunch of complex trauma issues. So if I'm in control, nobody's going to see my shame. Nobody's going to see how bad I think I am. If I'm in control, I'm going to get my needs met. If I'm in control of everything, then I don't have to worry about trusting anybody. If I'm in control, I'm not going to get hurt again. If I'm in control, I don't have to be afraid of change or the unknown because I'm in control of every detail. If I'm in control, that'll fix my anxiety. If I'm in control, nobody's ever going to abandon me. If I'm in control, I'll never feel helpless. I'll have a feeling of power, the thing I never had as a child. If I'm in control, it's going to help me be perfect. If I'm in control, that's going to make me feel better about all the internal turbulence that I live with and feel all the time. It's going to help make it feel less. So being in control is very attractive to people coming out of complex trauma, but all the damage it does. It destroys relationships. It destroys parenting children well. So people go, well, I'm very organized. I don't think I'm a control freak. What are the characteristics of unhealthy control? So let me very quickly give them to you. You tend to micromanage others to make them fit your expectations of how things should be. And those expectations are often realistic. You don't believe in imperfection, and you don't think anybody else should either. Everything needs to be done perfectly, which is the way you want it to be done. You spend a lot of time trying to change those closest to you. You believe that if someone would change one or two things about themselves, then they'd be happier and you'd be happier. And so you try to help them change their behavior. And it's not about really what's best for them. It's about what makes you feel better. You tend to be quite judgmental and critical of others' behavior as right or wrong. And then you tend to be, if you're not trying to overtly change them, a little bit passive aggressive in trying to manipulate them to want to change You withhold your love from them so they'll want to please you and then be willing to change. So you become quite the manipulator. Then you offer a lot of constructive criticism, but it's really a veiled attempt to advance your own agenda. You offer unsolicited advice, thinking it's your right, that people need to hear what you have to say about things that would improve their life or their work. You tend to dominate projects because you think that if you want it done right, you need to do it yourself. Nobody else is going to be able to do it as well as you. Then you tend to redo the work of others so that it fits what you think it should be. You tend not to be a very good team player. You tend to get stuck in all or nothing thinking. There's only one right way to do it, and it's my way. You struggle with obsessing, ruminating on details. Every little detail you go over and over in your mind. You tend to berate yourself for the tiniest errors. So your inner critic is really powerful. You have trouble respecting others' boundaries. So when they say, no, I don't want your advice, or no, I don't want you to help out, you can't respect that boundary. You fear disorganization, failure, looking bad. That just scares you to death. You would rather do it yourself than delegate. You have a hard time relaxing. You have a hard time with ambiguity or gray areas. You want to know specific details about everything. You have a hard time not being okay with not knowing something. You want to know everything that's going on. You struggle with having empathy towards people who make mistakes. Your brain, you might not say it, but your brain tends to go to they're stupid or they're lazy or they lack self-discipline. You dislike depending on others, accepting help from others, and allowing them to do things for you. So if that's an issue for you, don't beat yourself up in the sense that that's what the child had to learn to do to try to survive. If I'm in control, I can fix a whole bunch of my problems. But realize that you have to gradually learn to let go of control, trust others, work with others, allow others to be themselves. The next characteristic, or the final characteristic, and you see that we got to 87, is they're more aware of the needs of others than of their own needs. So what happens to the child who's in complex trauma and they're too little to fight or flight? They still need mom and dad to meet their needs, even though mom and dad are hurting them and neglecting them. They basically they need to learn to fawn. And that's what we call the fourth F. And so fawning basically is the child now must become very attuned to mom and dad's needs, moods, thinkings, beliefs, values. They must be fully aware of where mom and dad are at all the time. So they have this radar that is highly attuned to mom and dad, to what they're thinking, feeling, any change in their mood, any change in their behavior. And so the child develops this heightened attunement to everybody else. That then leads to them becoming a chameleon. So now I will be an extension of what mom and dad want me to be. I will adopt their beliefs, their values, their thinking. I will reflect their moods. If they're upset, I will try to fix their moods. I will be whatever they need me to be to keep them happy. Because if I do that, that gives me the best chance of them not hurting me and of them meeting my needs. But what happens in that is they begin to not be attuned to themselves. They don't know what they feel. They don't know what they think. They don't know what their desires, their passions, their emotions are. They just know what everybody else's desires and passions are. Put it another way, what is happening in the child who grows up in that's what they needed to do to survive, is they begin to develop a belief that the only way to have a good relationship, the only way to survive in a relationship is to make yourself smaller, to shrink, and to make the other person bigger. Also, conform to what the other person wants and put all your needs and desires down. Repress them. So you basically become a reflection of what the other person wants and needs. So the only way you have any chance for peace and happiness is to become smaller, to put your needs aside, to become what the other person wants, and they get good at it. But they now come into adult relationships, and that's their go-to. As soon as they meet somebody and they feel attraction, they immediately start to shrink themselves. They immediately start to attune to what that other person wants, but they don't attune to themselves. So there's value in attuning to what other people want, need, think. That is an important skill in life. But a healthy relationship means I'm also equally attuned to myself. So I know what you think, but I also know what I think. I know what you feel. I also know what I feel. My thinking, my feeling is just as important as your thinking and feeling. That is what makes healthy relationships. As soon as you have relationships based on attunement that only goes one way, it always ends up in unhealthy relationships that will never be truly satisfying. So in recovery, learn to be attuned to yourself. Learn to stop many times a day and go, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's going on inside of me? Begin to figure all of that out. So, 87 characteristics of complex trauma. That's a lot. I think to summarize, what I really hope in this series is, number one, you realize that complex trauma is not some little innocent thing. It does a ton of damage in every area of life. You don't experience it too much in childhood because those were your survival skills. It's not until adult life that you begin to experience the full ramifications of the damage of what took place in childhood. But having said all of that, the second thing is, the purpose of this series is to help you begin to put into words, help you become aware of the damage so that you can change it. So you didn't start the problem, but now you can fix the problem. Now you can take responsibility and have tools and begin to change and get healthy. There is hope. Final thing, what I hope you begin to realize is you don't undo all of this damage with 3 quick little fixes. It's not a quick, easy solution. There's a ton of work. There's a relearning of life. There are so many factors, so many nuances that you have to begin to understand. That is the purpose of our LIFT program, is to help people begin to get this new understanding of themselves, of healthy, so that they can begin to break through all of these old maladaptations. Well, thank you for being part of this series. I hope it has helped you.